Hi everybody, this is Dan Stolberger. Welcome to this week's KFIR Middle East Update. It's the week of July 2nd, and just before we jump in, remember, get the PDF PowerPoint that accompanies this video. You can get it at our website at holygroundexplorations.com, or there should be a link on the YouTube page itself. We usually begin jumping in with news bites. A quote from Biden. He says, "What I can say to you is that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon on my watch." That was a comment he made to President Rivlin of Israel, and we take comfort in that there is that statement being made, but we will scratch our heads and wonder why there's a continued push for this negotiations with a renewed Iran policy. We'll have more of that in a bit. Now, that's some good news. Now, some alarming news. Study shows that there's a dramatic drop in young evangelicals supporting Israel. Polls show that Israelis, actually because of this drop, that Israelis are wondering how this will impact the future support of Israel and what can be done to reverse this trend. Other news, Ilhan Omar back at it again. There's a website called stopantisemitism.com, and they've tweeted that Omar is refusing to take any responsibility for her latest obscene anti-Semitic remarks regarding Israel. Her colleagues in the Jewish colleagues in Congress, and she has the audacity to blame all of this on the Jewish members, again equating the U.S. with Hamas, and again ranting and raving about injustices, and it's all pointed at Israel. Biggest concern in the Middle East right now, militarily speaking, not the F-35s, not the Israeli Merkava tanks or whatever, it's now drone warfare. They're the greatest threats to the Middle East. Hamas, for example, used new drones, again out of Iran, to attack Israel during Gaza. And as we'll see here in a moment, the U.S. actually struck Syrian, Iraqi sites because of the launching of drones threatening U.S. bases as well. So drone warfare taking precedence over rocket warfare. This I just read, I find it interesting, with all the craziness that's taking place in the world. Out of Iran comes this: Israeli Mossad intelligence agency has infiltrated Iran's leadership, and many senior officials in the Islamic Republic are compromised. A former Iranian intelligence minister just spoke this morning. Again, the question always is why are these mysterious explosions taking place? Why are there targeted assassinations and they're successful against nuclear scientists, etc., all relating to the nuclear program of Iran? If this isn't true, it's enough to, it's beneficial for Israel anyhow, because it's got Iran completely looking over its shoulder, thinking we have been dramatically compromised. So our major articles for this week, unfortunately, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has asked President Biden to completely lift all sanctions on Iran, as was outlined in the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. In his report to the UN Security Council on the Iranian nuclear deal, Guterres urges the U.S. to fully renew waivers for the nuclear, you gotta love this, non-proliferation projects according to Reuters. So once again, the U.S. is going to get pressure from the UN. You know what the UN stands for through in Israel, of course, is the United Nothings. And so once again, we're getting pressure to support Iran. This is going to continue to move these antagonists together. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham warns that a war between Israel and Iran could be, his words, could be imminent. And he blames the U.S. President Joe Biden for the situation. His quote, "I've never been more worried than I am right now about a war between Israel and Iran." Once again, with this news out of the UN, this pressure, and it seems that the Biden administration are more of placaters, trying to mysteriously create some sort of kumbaya, let's all get together, what can we give? There needs to be a strong stand at this point in time, and unfortunately we're not seeing that. Now, Hezbollah and Hamas. This is, again, we've gone from encouraging to alarming. This I would classify as frightening, right? Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah and Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh met this last Tuesday in Beirut. And the big question is that these two entities, Hamas and Hezbollah, what's the deal? They seem to be focusing in on learning from the latest conflict how that they might further cooperate and coordinate their military activities against Israel. And that's always been the biggest fear, right? That there would be a multi-front attack. Hamas from Gaza, Hezbollah from a combination of Lebanon as well as Syria. And how does Israel deal with the two-front issue? Up to this point, time it's not been a major deal because these entities usually hate one another and vie against one another. Their only common ground is their hatred of Israel. And so we're concerned about this. But then there are those that would say this meeting comes at a time when Hezbollah is struggling. Lebanon is an absolute mess at this time. It looks like it might be in total financial collapse. And Hamas's capabilities have been significantly diminished following the latest operation there, Guardian of the Walls. And so it may be licking their wounds, but anytime these two entities get together to brainstorm, it's a concern. As I mentioned earlier, the U.S. carried out an airstrike on the border region between Iraq and Syria, targeting Iranian-supported Iraqi militias that have been using, and here it is again, drones, unmanned aerial vehicles to target U.S. personnel and facilities. The drones are particularly dangerous because they have the ability to fly under radar coverage. So again, that warning about drone warfare, and we struck. That's noteworthy. We'll end with this, the instability in the Middle East, the instability primarily of the Palestinian Authority. Rage continues in the West Bank, but for once, at this time, it's not directed at Israel. Palestinians are raging against their own leadership, specifically Mahmoud Abbas. There was a critic of Fatah, and this person, Nizar Banet, was arrested by the Palestinian Authority, tortured and killed. And so Abbas is battling against Hamas, and Hamas is battling against Abbas, and sometimes you wish them both success, right? But the Palestinian News Watch reports that the sun has set on the dictatorship of Abbas. over the Palestinian Authority, and it's just now a matter of time until he leaves, whether it's poor health or just the discontentment and the instability. Abbas holds 3 central roles in Palestinian politics. He's the head of Fatah, he's the head of the PLO, and he's the chairman of the Palestinian Authority. The questions now are, when does he leave? And here's the big one. Who will replace him? And will any of the replacements hold all 3 of these parties? And is there ever a chance for peace in the Middle East? And as I've been tracking all this literally now for about the last 20 years, I don't have a whole lot of hope. The good news is that I know the one who holds Israel in the palm of his hand. I know the one that scoffs and laughs at all the kingdoms of this world as they rage against him. Our God is still and has always been in complete control. And we can take peace, shalom, solace in that fact. That's our report for this week. God bless you and shalom.